Have you ever wanted to make your own podcast? Anchor can help. It's free. The creation tools allow you to record and edit right off your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. It can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from it too, with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
And now on to a segment that basically I created for you, man. Well, I'm going to say we created it because we talked about it, but it's called Dear ODC, Play Devil's Advocate for Me.
Let's do it, bro. Let's do it.
So we named
what
this.
do we got?
We named this segment Play Devil's Advocate for Me, because a lot of times people come up with situations and problems, and it can sometimes help when someone plays devil's advocate. And you tend to play devil's advocate quite a bit. So I thought, yeah, man, that's a good idea, because it actually helps people sometimes see a different side of things, right?
And to come onto their own conclusions themselves.
Right. It's like a little push, right? It's
Right.
like, hey, check this side of the conversation out, because some people are just one-sided, and I'm guilty. I think everybody at one point or another is guilty of just seeing their side of things. But they always say there's three sides of a story.
Every story.
Yeah. And so there's go ahead and help me out here, bro.
There's your side,
right?
There's your story, my story, and then somewhere in the middle is the truth.
The truth. That's right. So what I want to do here is make this our main topic today. We got an email from a person who wishes to remain anonymous, which we respect. So I'm going to read it out because she gave me permission to read. Oh, shouldn't have said she or he.
You're going to have to edit that out, bro.
Yep. So I'm going to read it out. It says, "Hello, gents." Well, actually, she gives away herself anyway, so I'm not totally at fault there. "Hello, gents. The other night I was ranting like a drunken Bronx woman about how today we have seemingly gotten away from the way we were raised. The rant went into how we, the collective, have seemed to abandon the rules we had as kids, almost like our parents were wrong for raising us the way they did. But we still say how great we had it. Well, if it was so great, why did we abandon it with our own kids? I hear parents talking about how today's kids/youth are not the same. I hear them blaming technology and the system for it. But who is bringing the technology into the home? Where's the control of the outside to inside? Is the weight of the systems in place so overwhelming that as a parent you have no influence or control? What rules as a child that you currently impart onto your children? Example, I could not call any adult by their first name. It was always Mr. Jeff, Uncle ULIKA, and so on. Does your kid have access to today's technology? Example, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs raised their kids with limited technology. Steve Jobs noted that his kids did not even have an iPhone or an iPad. How much access do they have? Are they on social media? What applications or platforms? Look, it was only a suggestion. I know that you gents like to keep the conversation light. So that's it. And so I say, ULIKA, go ahead, play a devil's advocate, bro.
Well, in listening to the email, the first thought that comes to mind is a TV. Okay. When I was growing up in my parents' home, I only had one TV in the house. Do you remember how many TVs you had in the house, bro?
Probably two. I would say two. Because we got a little one in my room for like a black and white, a little black and white TV.
Okay.
And then there was the main one that was in the living room. That's it.
Right. Which one had cable?
The living room. Well, actually, we didn't have cable back then. There was a time where it was just antennas in New York. So, but we did have, I mean, there was cable back then, but I'm just saying we didn't. I was too, poor for that. So,
okay.
So we just had rabbit ears.
Back then, cable was considered to be a type of luxury.
Yes, right? Exactly. Yep.
Whereas today, cable is a necessity.
Yes, yes. Can't even watch TV without it. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
It's crazy.
I mean, you could get off-air antennas that are digital and so on and so forth, but it gets to be a little bit technical, and you got to even go onto a website to figure out which type of antenna rating you can get.
Right.
Work in your area. So it gets to be complicated, and then it's like if you have to go outside and install that thing, you might actually need a technician to come out and do it for you. It's not like back in the day where you used to get rabbit ears with each TV that you purchased.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy.
And plug and play, and then you would, move the antennas around and twist it, flip it, rotate it, pull one up, one down, angle one towards the kids, And you tell your youngest son, hey, just stand right there. Don't move.
Right. Yeah, right there. Just stand right there.
Now, my household, we only have one TV, but we did have cable. Now, keep in mind, that was when we came into New York. My parents found that cable service was actually very inexpensive. It would cost like maybe $10 or $14 at that time, month. And, we didn't have all the channels. We didn't have HBO and Cinemax and Showtime and everything else like everybody else that I knew that had cable had. We had like a basic package, but coming from Europe, where we used an antenna, and in Lisbon, we used to have two channels, RTP1 and RTP2. And they had a schedule when they were on and off. Wow. So RTP1 would be on for 4 hours in the morning from 8 to 12. And then they would go off air. And after lunchtime, around 2 o'clock, RTP2 would come on. So, to us, it was a big deal to be able to watch more than just two channels at any one point in time of the day.
Wow.
But why am I getting this? When I became a parent with my firstborn, Natalia,
Hi, Natalia.
Parenting is a very demanding, let's call it job, if you will, or responsibility. So parents need to have time off. And so what we found, Natalia's mom and I, is that Elmo played a very big part in our yes, exactly. At Sesame Street and in our raising of our daughter, because when we were tired, we had things to do or what have you. The TV became the new babysitter.
Yeah, and it happens. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I know that people sometimes sit their kids in front of the TV and let them raise the kid. We were talking about dogs and stuff, children.
Exactly. Now, when we were kids, I'll tell you that my mother was always in a hurry to get me out of the house. So she'd make sure I was clean. She'd make sure I was groomed, fed, and then she'd say, "Go, get out. Don't come back until 8 o'clock."
Yeah, and that was the thing back in the day, right? I mean,
and back in the day, I think most all of us had a bicycle, a skateboard, roller skates, something to keep us busy.
Yep.
But that was back then, In '85, Nintendo came out to the market in New York.
Yep.
And I think I had one of the first 100 or so. I bought it at Woolworth's. Actually, my dad bought it for me at Woolworth. But I only had the two games that came with it, And then I think I had one extra game, which was Super Mario Brothers, which was given to me as a gift the following year.
Right.
Because, you know, those games were very expensive. One cartridge back then was $30.
Yes, I remember that. You know, I was begging for them.
That were even more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But that created the craze that we know of today with the video games that you know all these playing. But back then also, in order to play that video game, you had to adapt the game console onto your regular TV, and it would broadcast on channel 3 or channel 4, depending on where you put that switch.
Yep.
But back then, also, parents were still eager to get their kids, and this is an assumption. Parents were still eager to get their kids to get out of the house because they had things to do.
I think
whether
most
it be
parents were,
or you know, they needed to take a nap and take a break for themselves or what have you.
Yeah.
These days, you know, we have a shift because if you think about your childhood when you were a kid, bro,
mm-hmm.
you used to go everywhere and anywhere in New York City at a young age. Like, for example, I started taking public transportation by myself when I was 10 years old.
Oh, so did I. Wow.
Exactly. Now, would you let your kids take public transportation by themselves, bro?
Hell to the no, no. Hell no.
No, and my daughter's 10 now, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with that at all.
Exactly. Because times have changed. Times have changed.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, back then, you'd hear all kinds of crazy stories about weirdos and psychos out there.
Right.
But, you know, parents still sent your ass out to go and play. And don't come back till 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Or when you see the sun come down, it's time to come home.
Yeah. Or the street light come on, you know, it's getting dark and you just go home. But
exactly.
Yeah, the weirdos, I think, and the pedophiles now, they're worse now, I think. Like they're more
I don't know if it's worse or if there's just more
of them. or they just come out and do it. They don't. We're more aware of them because of maybe the internet and stuff too.
That's also a possibility too.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you, out of all my kids, Natalia was born at that time period where she was born in 1999. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Facebook and the likes were not mainstream yet. The internet was not mainstream yet. See, it's like I just mentioned about, you know, cable TV versus antennas. You know, back then, cable was a luxury. Not everyone had it. And those who did have it, it was just because they wanted a little bit more comfort or they could afford it, you know. But the internet also started off that way. There wasn't much that you could do on the internet except communicate anonymously or electronically. You know, and it was more of a technology thing and a wow factor for some people like myself or Tom, you know, and but not everyone had it. And back then, when I was a teen in high school, Tom and I used to do the bulletin board systems. You know, like Magpie. I remember Magpie, BBS, and there was one also for school teachers. But not very many used it, you know. And that was like forums that people can go and kind of electronically connect with each other, you know. But so with Natalia, when she was a kid, the internet was not a big thing. It was not mainstream. It was more of a luxury or a necessity for some people who worked with IT, but very limited necessity.
Right.
You know, so you know, we had dial-up. You know, that's when they talk about the days of dial-up. You know, because that's how we used to connect through a phone line. But then, it all of a sudden became mainstream. You know, they commercialized the internet where you can go and purchase stuff from your favorite stores, but if you get it online and they ship it to you, you get 25% off, 15% off. So, they just kind of created this thing. Now, with the advances of technology, such as the smartphones, the iPhone, Androids, the cell phone companies making it easier for everyone to own a cell phone, because back then also, you used to pay like $1,500 for a cell phone, and it looked like a big old lunchbox that you had to carry around with some straps on your shoulder, and with an antenna or two that you would, switch out and stuff to point out to, see if you get a signal from, cellular one. But then someone figured out that, hey, if we just put the phone device into their hands, we'll make money off of the billing.
Right.
And when they came down from charging people, it was an expensive thing you get for like, $45, $55, $60 a month. You'll get something like the right to use your cell phone for 15 minutes without any additional charges, whether you make the call or you receive the call. And then after that, if you, for each minute that you spoke on the phone, they would charge you some $2, $3, $4, $5 a minute, And then finally they came out with these unlimited plans where it doesn't matter how many minutes you're using on the phone. And they also started utilizing data on the phone so that you can get online and it became very useful. Today, people can't live without the internet. You can't do shit without the internet. You go out to go and apply for a job at, just a regular supermarket. Oh, yes, you're going to have to go online to www.supermarket.com and then look for the button that says apply here for a job.
Yeah.
It's no longer you go into a store and you fill out a paper application and you set up an interview date or talk to someone and, that someone gets a feel for who you are and everything else. So all that has changed. So, to get back to the email that we received about our children and the platforms and so on and so forth, listen, I never bought a game console in my life for my kids.
Wow.
I didn't. But their moms did. They got them I think Helen had gotten once the Wii, and Francisca got a used, I think it was a PlayStation or something like that. No, right. She also bought a Wii because Natalia and Daniel had a Wii, and Joan really cared for it, and she didn't want him to feel like, left behind. So that's how the Wii came into
but
play.
the Wii is actually supposed to be
an
like
active
a physical
thing.
Active, yeah.
Yes, and when they're young like that, that was just fine until they started going to their friends' houses who had the PlayStations and the Xboxes and all these, games that were way more interesting and not
way
physical.
More advanced, yeah.
And that's it. No longer will they use the Wii.
Right. No, that's true.
Yeah. So it also, with this comment that was made on the email, I will say this: how much of it is really that the times have changed? How much of it is keeping up with the Joneses? And let me break that down for a moment. Keeping up with the Joneses. Because one of the aspects that you will realize at some point, as I did, I did not want my kids to feel that they needed someone else, especially my daughter. I didn't want her to feel that she went without and that the only way that she could get it is by getting it from someone else. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So a lot of education, a lot of talking, and a lot of instruction was put in there with Natalia so that, she didn't feel that, she had to go with the first guy that flashed some cash and stuff like that because she wanted things that she couldn't have when she was growing up.
Right.
And I was always big on having the kids go outside and do things. So I really didn't push for the video games. Plus, the video games thing is very expensive.
Holy shit, that's $50. $50 dues! Holy balls!
And aside from that,
sure, man.
It's very addictive. Now, when I left Maryland, their moms went buck wild and gave them everything that they wanted. you know, all the video games and everything else, because in a way they were keeping up with the Joneses. My kids' friends, they would go and they would play these video games and at their friends' houses and everything else, and come back, and it almost seemed like they always wanted to go to their friends' house because of the video games.
Right. They had what they didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the moms just kind of caved in and said, well, I want them to have the same as their friends. I don't want them to feel left out.
Yeah.
So my question goes back to the emailer. How do you do with that? What technologies do your kids have?
Okay.
Now, there's another point to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing that the writer was talking mostly about getting beat up when they were kids by their parents, because those times have also changed too.
That was an acceptable thing back then, yeah.
Back then it was acceptable.
Now
yes.
It's totally taboo. I mean,
well, yeah. For me, it's a preference, but I recently have been forced into having physical discipline brought in with one of my children. But it is a behavioral and a psychological issue that I have to deal with. And I do not enjoy it by any means, and I do not like it. It is exhausting, and is not how I raised any of my kids. But it has to be done. It has to be done, unfortunately. And there are extenuating circumstances with this particular issue. But, do you really think, or do any of our listeners really think that it is, because we were brought up that way, where our parents for any and every little thing would whack you one? Does that mean that it's okay for our children to be brought up the same way? That's a question, food for thought.
Right. And just to give you my perspective on
beating up on your child.
I'm usually no, more like buying things for them. Like, I know that you mentioned, the moms in your case are the ones who pretty much didn't want them to feel left out, all this stuff, and they bought stuff. I am that kind of person more than Heather is, if that makes sense. It's basically the roles are reversed in this case. And the reason for that is not because I want them to have everything. It's just that, because I want them to learn to earn it, right? I mean, that's the whole point.
That I also agree with.
Yeah.
That I also agree with, that the children should earn what they get.
Yeah. And if they don't learn the value of $1 and how to earn it and then to, you can afford whatever you want, then there's no point to, you know what I mean? Like, you might as well just give them everything then. But you have to teach them. And so I find myself having to control myself to get them stuff, only because when they want what they want, and when they see, maybe they saw somebody have a phone or a game or whatever, a T-shirt they wanted. I still try to teach them to, okay, you have to earn that money so that you can go and buy what you want. Whereas Heather would say no, right? I mean, she does agree with the whole earning thing too, but it's more, she's more like what I call the treasurer here. So, she knows that if we can't afford it, you know what I mean? We just can't get it, which is what I would say when I didn't have kids. Oh, I'm never going to, if I can't afford it, they won't have it. Right. But when you have kids and everything, I really want to see them happy. Right. So when let's say my daughter comes to me and says she wants something, I help look for the thing in that particular, whatever she wants, the best product possible. And the reason,
can you elaborate on the best product possible? I didn't get that reference.
Kind of like, when you're buying something for yourself, let's say a car, right? And, I have the mentality, maybe a little bit too high maintenance, but when I go to let's say get a car, I don't want a beat up car. Like some people would be like, they see a beat up car or a beat up house and they see the potential in it, right? I guess I don't have that vision. I don't have that view that where I could say, oh man, I could fix this up and it could be cool. I just want it to be already there.
Ready to go.
And so if I'm going to spend my hard-earned money on something, I don't want to get my kids like a crappy game or a crappy this and that. I want to say, hey, let's get, if we're going to get this, we work hard for this money, so we're going to get the good stuff, And my wife is like of the other, we either don't get it or we get the cheaper version. And I'm like, well, you get the cheaper version. Basically, you get what you pay for. Right. So I just want to throw that in, even though it really has nothing to do with this topic, really. Well, it has a little to do, but
it has a lot to do with it, I think.
Okay.
I think it has a lot to do with it.
I think you gave a good adverse, another perspective. So I think that's awesome. I'm sure we'll hear from the emailer, and I hope that she listens intently to this episode.
I mean, I think that particular email has many different facets that we should address. That's why I went way back to when we were kids with the TVs and everything else. Because back then also almost every kid, like I said, had a bicycle or a skateboard or roller skates, etc. Kids today don't have a bicycle.
Yeah. That's
they may learn.
My kids do
to ride a bike, but they don't all have a bike.
Right. I didn't get my first bike until I was 10. By the way, I was like 9 or 10.
I think I got my first bike when I was, I want to say 5.
Yeah, that's when my kids got it around that time.
And the only reason why I got that bike, right, and talking with my mother about my past. It was because I was the youngest kid on my street. This was back in Lisbon, and all the other kids had a bike. So when she needed, there was always a hidden motive. She needed me to go outside, but she would see me just sitting there while everybody else was riding a bike.
She's slick, huh? So she went and got you a bike because of that.
So she got me a bike so I could keep on, and she found that a bike that I would ride for pretty much the whole day, right, was an excellent way for me to burn up energy, making me easier to deal with,
Right.
So it's kind of like going back to, kids and the TV being the new babysitter, because it's easier. You got things to do, a lot of parents are, that are young and have their first. They're trying to care and give the best that they can for their kids, but at the same time, they either have to work or go to school or both. They have to figure out their finances. They have to figure out, what's for dinner. They have to have time to cook and everything else.
There's a lot to figure out. You're right. There's no book that says, there probably is a book out there that says how to do it, but you know what I mean? It does. Parenting is just according to your situation, and so that's why, sometimes I don't like to judge some way that they, that somebody raises their child, because, hey, if it works for them, as long as it ain't hurting other people, you know what I mean, or hurting the child himself or herself, it's according to their situation. So that's my take on that.
And also, I also offer this too. The ability of a parent can only give to their child what that parent knows. And my grandfather used to say that education begins in the home. So pretty much everything you learn, about life and society and so on and so forth is in your home.
Right.
And today you're a child, as my dad used to say. Today you're a son, tomorrow you're a father. I found myself reflecting a lot on when I was a kid, when I became a parent. And I did set out to change a few different things. For example, instead of just having Natalia play all the time, I did sit down and do, not just me, but her mom too. We used to do fun activities that, in a disguise, were teaching her something. She was learning something.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'll say this also, and I have a good example to go with it. How many of us as adults actually listen to our kids when they're young, like 2 years old, 3 years old, you know, that stage when they just can't shut up and they're like all over the place and they're talking a lot? How many of us actually listen to everything that they say?
Right. Not a lot, probably. Well,
I'll say this. One of those many times that I did not use the TV as the babysitter and I was making dinner,
mm-hmm.
I always listened to my daughter whenever she spoke. Mm-hmm. So it was my way of connecting with her so that she felt that she had a voice and people hear her. And you know, at that age, the most important people to them are their parents.
Yeah.
You know, and so I listened to everything that she had to say. In that listening to everything that she had to say while I'm cooking, I was a bit distracted.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's talking about hottie. You know, she was about 2 years old. And she used to say hottie. And I was like, yes, that's right, sweetie. You know, the stove is hot. You shouldn't touch it. And she started getting more anxious. And she said, no, hottie, daddy, hottie, you know. And I was like, yes, sweetie, that's right. It's hot. And she's pointing hottie, you know, and she's getting like, you know, very excited, you know, with the hottie, but not an excited as in a happy way, excited as in a concerned way.
Okay.
And so I turned around and sure enough, I was on fire.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire.
Oh.
Yeah, wow. I had, you know, those mitts that you use to handle hot surfaces.
Oh, yeah.
And I was paying attention to her, and I didn't realize it, but the mitt had gotten over fire. It caught on fire.
Oh, my God.
You know, you see, I was like, yes, hottie. The stove is hot. I hadn't felt the heat yet on my hand.
Oh, my goodness gracious. That's a good thing you listened to her, man.
And, you know, I paid attention to her body language and everything else. And, you know, I said, well, wait a minute, she's trying to tell me something. And when I looked, I was on fire.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't have that kind of bond, you know, that, I don't know about, yeah, I guess bond is part of a bond, but like, that intuition to be like, oh yeah, she's actually changing to being very concerned here. So maybe I should, you know, look and see what she said. Yeah, that's
that means it, right. But if it was a kind of relationship where you know, my daughter would be talking and I'm like,
shut up. Just go.
Well, what I presume that what would have happened that night is she would have said hottie. I was like, yes, sweetie, it's hottie, yes. And she would have felt like she wasn't being heard anyway, and then she'd just walk away.
Yeah. And then you'd be left on fire, yeah. Wow.
Old way, in the hospital, she probably tried to tell me, I tried to tell you, dumbass.
You dumbass.
You know.
Hey,
that's
question for you, too.
Go for it.
Yeah, like, because, you know, obviously I have a daughter too, and she speaks now. Sometimes I look at her and she's only 10, but it's like, wow, you can tell that she's learning a lot. She talks to me as if we're just having we just have conversations, and sometimes the conversations sound like adult, not adult in a bad way, but adult meaning grown-up conversations where, you know, she seems very free to tell me anything. Like she's not afraid to. And I like that. I love that. And I'm wondering though, my question to you is, do you think, because I know Natalia is a very well-spoken woman, and, you know, I think a lot of it has to do, and that's why my question is, do you think it has to do with the way you treated her or the way you valued her opinion when she was young? Or her, you know, whatever she said, because I did kind of the same thing with my daughter. I'm not so much with my son, because my son, you know, he likes to annoy me, and I can see that he does. And so I just play with him a lot more. I don't really talk deep with him, but he's also just 7. But when Shayla was 7, we were already talking about, things that happen in school. And I don't know if that's because she's a girl and girls kind of learn faster and there's merit to that. I don't know. My question is that, I guess. Do you think it has something to do with the way you and Helen decided to value her opinion, basically?
Well, I will start by saying this. As you were talking and coming to your question,
God damn it, Jeff!
I thought about also the past. Did you feel that you had that openness and that freedom with your mother when you were growing up?
No.
Exactly.
No.
Neither did I.
And it's not that, we're not saying that they were mean
bad parents at all.
Or bad parents.
No, it's just
wasn't there. It wasn't the
exactly. Yeah. There was like a barrier of some sort. You
you did things you don't. Yeah, things you don't talk about
with your parents.
Yep, around your parents or.
The best to keep your children safe is to be involved in whatever they're involved in.
Yeah.
Whatever is going on in their minds, you should know, and the only way that you're going to know is by giving them that freedom to be able to speak.
Right.
In all actuality, life is nothing but a stage. It's there's different stages that we go through, and I can't think of stages that I went through that are contradictory as to my current stages. Mm-hmm. But as an example, and I'm sure after the podcast, I'm like, damn it, I should have said this, But each individual, especially children, they need to be able to express themselves.
Yes.
And to find themselves.
Right.
And you can't really restrict that. Now, when a child feels that they don't have that freedom to tell you stuff, what do you think is going to happen in their teen years? They're just going to hide stuff from you left and right.
Yeah, it just increases the desire to do that. Yeah, because it's like I can't tell my dad anything. He's going to do this or he's going to react to this way and that. And the sad part is I do overreact to certain things.
What? You? No.
And that's just, knowing me, you probably can definitely understand what I'm saying. I do. I still overreact to certain things. And then I hate myself for doing that because I'm teaching them that they, they probably can't come to me, but they can go to mom because she's cool about everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. But the weird thing about that is that I find my kids still coming to me and still giving me these chances of listening to them. So I take those chances now all the time, like especially with my son. Like I know my daughter's going to come to me and talk to me about something, but my son, I don't know. I can't really tell yet. But I do see certain times where he comes to me and he starts talking about something and I hadn't even asked him anything. And it sounds like a real conversation. So I just let him go. I let him talk. Mm-hmm. Right. And I listen. Exactly. And I take advantage of that. So that's taught me to, when I calm down is when that's where I need to be. I can't be in the overreacting stage like my mother used to be, And like I said, Mom, if you're listening, you're beautiful. You're a great parent. I really do feel like I got a lot of parenting skills from her too, because although that, I didn't tell her everything or I didn't, have the same comfort in coming to her with everything, I did when I got older. And I still...
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
same here.
I feel now that we're like best friends. We can talk about anything. It does have, I guess every style has a way to progress and, become something good. You know what I mean? But right now I'm just, man, I'm loving life with my kids and thank God for that because they're
so there's another segment of that email, or statement of that email. How when the emailer was a kid, everyone was Mr.
Yes.
or Miss or Miss
or uncle or aunt or give them the title they respect. Yeah.
Right.
A lot of kids don't do that these days.
So I wanted to address that as well.
Okay.
I was never raised that way.
Okay.
I was always raised to be respectful, but not like that.
Mr.
If I was going to say Mr. or Miss or Mrs., I always used the last name of the person. And I would also say ma'am. Now, in Portuguese, just like in Spanish, there is a formal or excuse me, they call it a formal, respectful way of addressing someone, like, you, Y-O-U, right? In English, we just have you,
right?
Period. But like in other languages, there is the respectful version or formal version,
and the informal. Yep.
And then the informal, when you have a certain level of intimacy or friendship and etc.
Yep.
Like, in Spanish and Portuguese, it sounds the same. It's tu, T-U, as in you. Or the respectful version in Spanish would be usted.
Usted. Yeah.
Instead of you. Usted. That's what you would use with someone that you don't know, or someone that you're trying to show respect,
right?
Or senior to you. In Portuguese, it's você, V-O-C-E.
Yes,
is the equivalent of usted, right? My parents never raised me to talk like that.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Because I don't know if you recall, one time I went with my dad to the UN for the General Assemblies.
Yep.
And I was going there to go meet George Bush Sr., President George Bush Sr. And, there was gridlock. It's New York City. There's always gridlock, right?
Of course,
and we were going to be late. And, when the President of the United States comes in, or the prime minister or president of the then Soviet Union would come into the UN, as a matter of security measures, the Secret Service would always, not allow anyone into the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
They would close down all of the entrances if you got there after the president, because they couldn't vet you.
Right.
You had to be there before the president arrived. If the president arrived before you did, you weren't getting in.
You're assed out.
So nervous. I was nervous about that, because to me at that time, I thought to myself, oh man, this is the president of the United States, it's a big deal. And my dad, while we were sitting in traffic, in the ambassador's car, Dundee, you remember Dundee, he was driving us that. My dad said, son, just keep in mind, titles are important and they denote a specific function. But George Bush is a man just like you and just like me.
Right.
So, yes, you give everyone respect.
Right.
But no one is above you.
Exactly. And we're all human beings. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We all put on our pants the same. Some might try to put it on two legs at a time, but we bleed the same. So
exactly.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
Even when I was in the military, I had hardest time that I had was addressing people by their ranks, like sergeant and et cetera, et cetera. I used to always go for their last names as opposed to, sergeant this or that, or lieutenant this or that, or colonel this or that, because to me, they're a man just like you and me.
Right. Right.
No different. It's just that they have a title.
Right. And that's just formalities. Yeah.
Yeah. In the military, it's a military formality,
right.
A sign of respect and so on and so forth.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
But they're no different than any one of us. They just happen to have a higher title.
Right.
A certain level of responsibility. So even with my own kids, I've tried to teach them how to be formal, respectful, but at the same time, I try to teach them that they're not beneath anybody else.
Right. Yep.
It's important to respect everyone, but at the same time, not to the point that you put yourself down either.
Right.
And also to elaborate on the uncle and the aunt thing, growing up, I had many uncles and aunts that weren't even blood family, but that was more of a denotion. Like, for example, your kids,
right.
You and I are not blood relatives,
but your Uncle ULIKA.
To my kids, you're Uncle Jeff, and there's Uncle Tom.
Uncle Tom.
That just the closeness.
Right.
Uncle Tom sounds funny. I don't.
Yeah. But I'd like to thank you on behalf of this emailer, because I know the emailer. So, but I'm sure she would be thankful. But she would probably also say, feel like, maybe we didn't answer all her questions, but I'm just going to say it's because, we have to move on with the show, unfortunately.
And ULIKA
but
can
if
talk.
she has, yeah, but if she has, if she wants, we can go ahead and email her off, the air or off the radio waves. What am I talking about? Podcast.
Got to be a lot of writing there, bro. But the emailer is welcome to
Respond.
Pick certain points that we've mentioned, and email us again.
Yeah.
And we'll dedicate, perhaps maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes. We say that, but it always turns out to being like an hour or two.
Yes, exactly.
Towards that particular topic, because there's no one simple answer for anything.
No. There's not.
There's no one answer for anything, and I think that with the email as it was written, there are many different facets that we have to take into consideration.
Right.
How times changed, why we were brought up the way we were back then, and how things have changed to today in terms of answering all the questions on the technologies and so forth.
Yep.
I would have to ask the question: why is it that Bill Gates and what's his name, right? From Apple,
Steve Jobs? Yeah, why didn't they let him use their own product? I don't know. I don't think that's true, but I'd have to research that.
Because I know that Bill Gates has in one of his houses that he built some years back.
Mm-hmm.
It incorporates a lot of Microsoft right into his house. He's got a smart house.
Yep.
So even though his child might have not had, the what is that Microsoft version of the cell phone?
Oh, the Android. Oh
no,
I'm sorry.
That's Google's.
Oh, geez. I don't know.
Okay, so even though his child it was never given
you mean the
one
iPhone?
of his own products.
No, the iPhone is Mac. There's actually a Windows.
iPhone would be the Mac.
There's actually a Windows phone, isn't there?
There is. Yeah, there is a Windows phone, and then they have the Windows tablet, which is actually pretty cool from what I've heard. I've never used it.
Right.
But either way, the point is why didn't their kids ever get it?
Right. That's a good question. We'll have to research that.
I'll say this. If their kids go to the refrigerator and they have cameras that are pointing inside so that they don't have to open, and it's what they call a smart refrigerator, they might have not had a cell phone that would attach to the refrigerator, but they have a house that's a smart house, and everything they do is technology based.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So there's more to that.
Yeah.
It could be that, Steve Jobs, for example, maybe didn't give his kid when his kid was under 8 or under 10. I don't, that maybe he felt that it was too young for them to have a cell phone.
Right.
And I agree. As a matter of fact, I thought Natalia was too young to have her first cell phone at the age of 6. But because of her mother's insistence of her walking to and from school by herself.
Wow, at 6?
At 6,
wow.
I felt it was a necessity for her to have a cell phone and make sure that if anything, she would just whip it out and call 911.
Right.
On the back end, I don't know if you remember, bro, but on the back end, that cell phone was a roaming GPS.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a roaming GPS. If you recall, I had set up these geofences so that if that cell phone went outside of that boundary line that I created,
then you knew something was wrong.
It would alert all of us, including you. You were working at the FBI building back then.
Oh, okay.
Or for the FBI, I should say. I don't know if you remember or not, because I do remember that you got the notification before I did, and you frantically called me.
Right, yeah, I do remember that.
You got the alert that she had left the boundary.
Right. Yeah, man. I think that was a smart idea. I mean, I think people should.
And that was the only reason why I gave her a cell phone at that time.
Probably think of it in those terms versus, they're too young or whatever. I did get my my daughter a cell phone at 10, and I thought, man, I know that other parents are probably like, why are you getting her a cell phone, blah blah blah. But I think, like you said, it's probably a better thing as far as GPS, location, all that stuff. And like I said, like you said, the times have changed. I think kids are way more, informed about certain things and just seem more involved in more mature subjects. So.
I mean, we have technologies that facilitate and give us a certain peace of mind, because it's not all 100% foolproof, right?
Right.
But like, you take my mother, the most frugal woman that I know in life, aside from my wife, Wanda. Okay. When I was a kid, she told me, right, that I have to let her know where I am at all hours or all the time.
Yeah.
And so she taught me how to do a collect call from any payphone.
Right. Yeah.
And she was telling the story to Wanda a couple of years ago. She's like, oh my gosh, I showed Ulika because, Ulika would disappear and I didn't know where he was and everything else. So I showed him how to make a collect call. And then the next thing I know, every 10 minutes he was making a collect call.
But would you do? Would you do this? Would you call, and then once you hear, please say your name at the tone, and then
like the old commercials.
Yes.
Had a baby, it's a boy.
Yeah.
Had a baby, it's a boy.
We had a baby, it's a boy. Yeah.
Yes.
I used to do that all the time. I used to call my mother.
Operator, I'd like to make a collect call, please. First name Bob. Last name is We Had a Baby, Eats a Boy.
Hello?
Collect call for Mr. Bob. We Had a Baby, Eats a Boy.
Sorry, wrong number.
Who's that, dear?
Bob, they had a baby. It's a boy.
Oh.
And be like, I'm over at Ulika's. All right, that's all I wanted to say. Goodbye. Yeah. And then it was like, you have a collect call from, I'm over at Ulika's. That's all I wanted to say. Goodbye. That's funny.
Yeah, I used to do that with my mom too,
Yeah.
Or give me a call.
Right, yeah.
Give me a call.
Give me a call at blah, 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 blah number.
And when I got older and, I had communications issues and stuff like that due to monies and stuff, that was one of the things that I used to do with Tom. When I wanted to speak with him, I'd call and ask me for my name. Please state your name after the tone. And I'd say 301-555-1212. It was a payphone number.
And then he would call you back. Yeah.
And he would call me back. So it would be cheaper on him, than taking a collect call,
Right.
But these days, you'd be lucky if you find a payphone.
Right. Yep. It's crazy. But I just want to...
If the technology was available back then, I'm quite certain that my mom, as a safety precaution, as well as, a certain peace of mind, like I mentioned, she would have gotten me.
Please continue to listen to Off the Cuff. Next episode is the last one of this week, episode 13. Enjoy.